This is the first video in a series of short videos about your ME30 kits. In the past, the kit introduction video has been about 45 minutes long, but this semester I'm going to break them up into more shorter, easier to digest segments. The first video is an introduction to the very basics of the kit. After watching this video, you should absolutely make sure that you watch the next one as soon as possible about how to handle and not to handle the kit. I'll also show some of the differences between last semester's kit and this semester's kit, since some of you bought one of the last semester's kits from me or are perhaps borrowing one from someone who took the class last semester. Once it comes time to writing programs for your kits, we'll also talk about the small differences between the two kits again at that point. The later version of the kit has, the earlier version of this kit has version 1.0 boards, and the current one has version 1.1 boards. And the version number of each board is printed somewhere on the top of each of the individual boards. So first of all, the kits are packaged pretty much exactly the same. The box is slightly oversized given the size of the kit that's actually in it, so that there's room to stuff some other miscellaneous stuff in there, including the USB cable right into the box, so you can carry it around together in one piece. The box is very sturdy and should hold up for at least the 2 semesters that you'll be using your kit. As I've mentioned elsewhere, we're going to be using the same hardware for ME106, so don't lose track of your kit between now and then. Hopefully you'll enjoy using the kit in this class and play with it on your own time, even before you get into ME106, whenever you get around to taking it. So all kits come with a wad of paper in the box, deluxe wad of paper, to prevent the kit from rattling around inside the box when you carry it back and forth between school and home. As long as you don't smash it down into a smaller ball, even the wad of paper should hold up for a while. Feel free to replace or augment the wad of paper with a pair of old, worn out gym socks, or a hamster or two if you have a couple lying around to take up the extra space in the box. However, you really should keep something in there because it's not good to have the kit banging around in the box. Unfortunately, I think that should be obvious, but some students in the past, as soon as they get the kit home, they take the wad of paper out and the rest of the semester it bangs around inside the box. Oh well. So here's each of the 2 kits. This is last semester's kit and this is this semester's kit. The major difference is that there are 3 boards in the newer kit and 4 in the older one. Problem is, the last semester's kits were new at the time, and in practice it took me a lot longer to make them than I anticipated, and I needed to start looking for ways to help cost reduce it. The first change was basically to take what's on this board right here and put the contents of it on the new kit over here. This saves us the cost of both the additional subboard and the 4 extra connectors that it takes to bridge between the PCB, the printed circuit board itself, and the baseboard, which we'll talk about more. That saves both the labor and the cost of the parts to solder them on. I'll talk more about that later. So now about the kit itself. So the central part of the kit is the Adafruit Feather M4 controller board, which is right here. It's the microcontroller, the processor, which actually runs the programs that you write. So we're using this board in ME106 also. I don't make these boards. I get these from a company in New York called Adafruit, and they make a ton of stuff that we in the mechatronics track find very useful. If you don't check them out before ME106, you'll almost certainly be doing that then when you get to ME106. And I'll post a website I'll link to the website later on. Here's an example of just the board itself before it's even had any of the headers soldered onto it. So this is when I get them from Adafruit. This is basically how I get them in a package. So the board is in a format that Adafruit invented called the Feather format. It's a standard layout that they've defined that many other boards that they make also conform to. In fact, a number of other companies other than Adafruit are also making boards in the same format. So for boards of this class, it's one of the 2 most popular formats at this point in time. The other one is the Arduino Uno R3 form factor that's about 9 years old at this point. We used that board for nearly a decade before we switched over to this format about a year ago. So because formats follow a standard configuration, both in terms of the size and the orientation of the headers that are on the board, there's now a fairly large collection of accessory boards available for adding additional hardware features to a feather board. These accessory boards are called feather wings. Feather wings can be directly or semi-directly attached to the feather board by two methods, stacked and flat. Using the flat method, we're using the flat method because it's a lot more flexible and robust than the stack method, in my opinion. We may talk about more of that later on, either in this class or in ME106, as to why we chose that direction versus the alternative one. So Adafruit, the same company that makes the processor board, probably still at this point has the largest collection of feather wings for sale. You can get them with all sorts of sensors and tiny displays and motor controllers and audio inputs and audio outputs and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and all sorts of stuff on them individually. As you can see, the board is kind of small, so there's a limited amount of stuff that you can stick on any individual board. If you want to see what you can connect via feather wing, the feather auxiliary board format, check out the feather category in the product section of Adafruit's website, and I'll post a link to that in the class notes. Many of these boards make sense to use in ME106, and I always recommend almost first in the class that students have a look at that section of their website when just trying to come up with ideas for their final projects. Because sometimes just knowing what's available that's inexpensive and easy to connect to your feather board can by itself give you ideas of things to implement for your projects. So to use feather wings with a feather using this flat method, you'll need a common baseboard to plug everything into. Adafruit has their own baseboard, but the one that I made specifically for this class includes some components on it that are used in almost all the projects that you're going to make. So rather than pay the penalty of the extra cost for making a separate feather wing for them, I put them directly on the baseboard. And I call the baseboard the tripler baseboard. So the baseboard is basically this blue background board that feather wings and the feather plug into. At some point later in the course, I'll probably show you one all dissected, and you can get a better feel for exactly how these things are connected together, but I'm going to forego that right now. So we've covered the blue baseboard, the tripler baseboard, and the main feather board, which is this black board here. So let's talk about the third board that's in the kit. This board right here, the third board in the new kit, I should say. This is called the Interact Wing, and it's got a bunch of components on it, other than the LEDs and the buttons that are on the baseboard, which you can see here. This board contains a temperature sensor, a light sensor, a small speaker, a rotary encoder knob, and another rotary device called a potentiometer. So the rotary encoder knob is very much like a volume or tuning knob that you'd find on like a car stereo or a home stereo or whatever. As you turn it, you can feel it click from position to position. This is, well, back when iPods had some mechanical controls on them, that one of them felt like this. It's very clicky. It's got a nice feel to it. The other rotary device is called a potentiometer, and it's much like those used as volume knobs on portable radios way back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, like 20 years ago before the iPod came out. This wheel rotates over about a 270-degree range, and using the microcontroller, you can tell what its angular position is at any point in time. And it rotates continuously, smoothly, rather than in the discrete clicky steps that the rotary encoder moves. And this leaves us with the last two devices, which are in the kit. And it's how they're connected is the major difference between the new version of the kit and the old version of the kit. In both cases, there's a laser pointer that's hot glued to the top of the servo motor. And the servo motor is hot glued in turn to one of the kit's boards. And we attach it directly to the kit via hot glue so that it's not loose and flopping around on the desk when the motor moves around. For how we'll use those devices in this class, it's a big advantage to have it attached rather than loose. However, the opposite may actually be the case if you choose to use a servo motor in ME106. After ME30, the likelihood is you'll probably want to separate these parts from the kit, but you can always leave it on if for some reason you don't have any other use for the servo and the laser pointer and you feel comfortable just leaving it on the kit for eternity. With the old kit, when you're not interested or not using these particular components, you can just take this board right off the kit. I'll just go ahead and do that now. Show you how that's done. And you can just take it off the kit and you're done with it if you're not using them. However, with the new version of the kit, you actually take a hobby knife and you score these two bridges here and you can just snap it off. And then you can salvage the servo motor and the laser pointer just by popping them off of it with hot glue, popping them off the hot glue. Now I will warn you that when it comes time to do that, that the longer that hot glue has been set to whatever it's joining, the harder it actually gets to separate them. So when hot glue is fresh, it's relatively easy to pop one off the other, but as they cure, they actually become harder, so you have to use a lot more care in separating the two. So as you've noticed already, when you connect the laser pointer on top of the servo motor, which can swing back and forth, you can use it to make a sentry gun, which you can control using the other devices on the kit, sensors or buttons or knobs or whatever, to make the turret move back and forth, like either one of the two rotary devices that's on the kit or the two buttons to make it go in each direction. How you do this is actually slightly different between the two kits because they're physically configured a little bit differently, but those differences will be described in another different video specifically to talk about those issues, along with a demo of the turret gun in action, which is actually pretty fun to watch. So the only other notable part of the kit is the USB cable that connects your kit to the laptop for programming. The kit side of the USB cable is micro B, which it actually connects here and is this connector. It's a connector that's up until fairly recently was used in a lot of tablets or in particular cell phones. So if you got one of your kits, if you got one of the cables from me, you'll know that it is you can be assured that it's a data/sync cable, which is in contrast to the other micro B cables that are sometimes floating out there in the wild that are charge-only cables. Those cables are incapable of transferring data, but good at transferring power back and forth between a wall adapter and your phone, which you may be trying to salvage a cable from. But I gotta warn you that a charge-only cable will not work with the kit because the whole way you program the kit is to transfer data from your laptop over to the kit via the data wires that are in that cable. So if you got your cable from me, you can pretty much be guaranteed that your cable will work. If you're bringing your own cable, you'll find that out very quickly when we start doing the first lab, because you'll find that your computer will not recognize that the kit's connected to it. So you'll learn how to get your programs onto your kit from your laptops during the first lab. One of the reasons why we're using the feather boards for this class is that they made it very easy, Adafruit made it very easy to get your code that you write onto the boards from your laptop, as you'll find out fairly soon. This is also the point at which you'll learn whether you've got the wrong cable or not, or a cable that doesn't support data. So that's pretty much it for the unboxing video for the kits this semester. The next video that you should be watching pertains to the proper handling of the kit, and I'll see you then.